And welcome everybody. My name's Don Giannetti, and we're going to look at a photograph I did in Omaha and take a look at the processes that I use on a lot of photographs, uh, and I do it almost every time. So these are my general working principles here. The photograph was taken in Omaha at Christopher Tierney's studio, and we used a single octabox right over camera, a little bit to my right, right over camera, and coming down. Now I wanted a very pool of light looking image, and I believe I underexposed it just a little bit. So I'm going to have to fix that. A little bit, no, I underexposed it quite a bit here. So I wanted to get some grunge in the walls. I knew what I could pull out in Lightroom, so I kind of shot it to that. Since that time, I've thought maybe I'll process it a little bit differently, and maybe I should have shot it a little bit differently. But at the time, I wanted this very deep, dark area here, and I would fix everything else. So we're going to kind of mix what I saw in my head at the time of exposure with what I actually got. Now, the first thing I start with is my lens correction, because I want to know what this image is going to crop to. And I know I've got to change my angle here. We're really kind of falling off to the right, and that really bothers me. I'm going to hit constrain crop, and I'm going to go to rotate, and I'm going to rotate it until it looks pretty good right about there. Yeah, now we got a vertical there. This line looks pretty good, and that looks like my center line right there. So that looks pretty good. We're going to jump right back up to the top. Start with exposure. We're going to add about a stop of exposure to it. A little over, well, stop at a tenth is just pretty good. That brings a lot of stuff out, but I want to add my grunge later with Nick and not do it here. I have reasons for that. So I'm going to drop the contrast here down just a little bit, which softens this chair. You can see if I take the contrast the other way, the chair becomes very dark and bright, and too much contrast for me. I'll add that later. Believe me, we'll pull it back. So I'm going to drop the contrast. I'm going to pull the highlights up just a little bit. Just there we go. That gives us a nice highlight right in there. I'm going to open the shadows up quite a bit, and that gives me the kimono to be seen here. And it also picks up this other foot, which was, if you remember, was pretty much gone. Whites, I'm going to add the whites up just a little bit, maybe 20 or so. Looks good. Blacks, I'm going to probably leave them alone. All right. Next slider down is clarity. So I'm going to drag my clarity up just a little bit by eye. About 20 looks plenty. I like to match my clarity with my vibrance when I'm doing people in the shots that I normally do. And in this particular case, since we are going to desaturate it later, I'm going to go ahead and add 20 points of saturation so that we can get some color in here, a little bit more colorful in the red, and then I'll pull it out later with a different technique. Tonal curves. Well, I think I'm going to bring my darks up just a little bit, and that gives me a little bit more in here. I think I'm going to bring my lights up just a little bit, and that refreshes my kimono, which I'm going to fix as well. And the highlights, if I come up a little bit, it doesn't seem to make much difference, so I'm going to leave it right there. Now that kimono, I want to get a little more color out of the kimono because, like I said, we are going to desaturate it later. So I'm going to grab this little guy right here, adjust right here, and I'm going to come out into the kimono, and there it's going to tell me there's some blue and some aqua. Okay, so I'm going to grab this aqua and I'm going to bring it out a little bit there. I'm going to grab this blue and bring it out just a little bit, and I know there's some green in there. I'm going to bring that out as well. All right. All right, there's really nothing else in here that I'm going to do. Sharpening, I'm going to take sharpening up about to 50. Let's find a place here. There we go. We can really see it there. Radius at about 2. All right. Detail up just a little bit. Yeah, let's go to 50. 50 looks good. Noise reduction, I don't have much noise in this particular image, so I'm going to leave it alone. And I am going to add a little bit of a vignette, just a very little bit. You can see it right there, just a little bit of it. Okay, now that's global. That's the whole image. Everything I've just done on here is the whole image. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to work with local adjustments, and that's these tools right here. I'm not going to use a whole lot of local adjustments on this particular image. I'm just going to use this brush. And I'm going to use this brush, I'm going to lower my clarity right here. I'm going to use this brush to open up her face just a little bit here. And I like to use O so I can see what I'm doing right in there. I think I'm going to come down into here with this same brush. Hit O again. Take my exposure up just a little. Okay, that's about all I need right there. I'm going to lower the contrast because I want it soft in there. Bring the clarity up just a little bit. All right, good. That opens this whole area up here. All right, I'm going to grab this one here. And I'm going to come in here. I'm going to add O again. And I'm going to paint this kimono. Oh, keep hitting the wrong one here. So I'm not looking at what I'm doing here. My goal being to make sure that I can bring some detail out in the kimono. So I'm going to hit O again. And then I'm going to use my exposure and drag it up just a little bit. Now I'm getting that kind of pool of light feeling that I wanted coming down on the kimono. This is the natural highlights on her face. And that looks pretty good. That's about all I'm going to do here in Lightroom. So let's move it over to Photoshop. And come on, Photoshop. There we go. Photoshop taking a little while to open there for us. And there we go. There's the shot. That's what it looks like in Photoshop. We can see it's not nearly as grungy as I wanted. It doesn't have a lot of the depth and stuff that I wanted. So what I have to do now is add some backlight. Now I'm going to darken this little back area here without affecting the subject in the chair. So I need to move the subject in the chair up a little bit. So I'm going to use my quick mask here. And I'm going to grab that chair right down in here, right over there. Very good. And there we go. That's all I need to lift up. I just need that back of the chair there. So let's go down into here just a little bit. And we don't need that right there. Okay. Pretty much, well, you know, now that I've thought about it, I think I'll go all the way down there. So we've captured this area right here, the chair. I'm going to go up to select and modify my feather to 2 pixels and Command J. It is now off the background. I am going to grunge up this background a little bit, but first I'm going to create a layer. Actually, I'm going to do this on the layer. I'm not going to create a layer mask, which is what I would normally do 9 out of 10 times. I'm just going to darken it a little bit. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustment, down into my levels, and I'm going to darken the midtones just a little bit, just about there. Okay, so that's right on here. Notice that it doesn't affect my gal in the chair. She's still sitting right where I want her. Excuse me. I'm going to add a Nick filter now, and the Nick filter will actually take this this layer that I'm working on here and make a new layer above this layer. So for now, I'm just going to actually move it up there. So actually, I'll move this layer down. Come on. Well, you know what? That's working this way is easier. Okay, so I'm going to actually do this nick layer to this top layer that we have right here. Okay, and I'm going to nick it with my Color Effects Pro. And I'm going to use the tonal contrast filter in Tonal Effects Pro to really give it some a little bit of a vibrance to that wall. See, we pick out that wall so much nicer. Now I hate what it does to her and the chair, and that's why we moved her up. So say okay. And there we go. I'm going to put that away for a little bit. I'm going to take this layer of her in the chair, move it up to the top. There she goes. Sits right over that. And then I'm going to take this tonal contrast layer, which is way too much, and I'm going to drop the opacity down to about 50%, somewhere in there. Okay. I want this thing to have a feeling of light back there, of light coming from behind her in the corner there. So I'm going to add that. We didn't have another light at the time. We were doing other things, and it got away from me. Time got away from me, and I did not put a light back there. But I could see that this chair would really easily cut out from the background, so I didn't worry about it. I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to set that layer to overlay. And I'm going to use this brush with an opacity of 10%. And I'm going to lighten up the background behind her just a little bit here. I'm not going to really make it look like a spray light or anything. I'm just going to bring out a little bit of brightness back there behind that chair so the chair kind of stands out. Okay, you can see what I'm doing here. All right, so notice that doesn't affect the chair. It just affected behind the chair. All right, I'm going to, well, I like to name my layers, spray. And I'm going to add a new layer on that called edges. And I'm going to grab black for that, black brush, set it to overlay. And with that black brush, I'm going to come right down the edge of that light that I just added. Give it a little bit more definition. Okay? So, looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. I'm going to click on this layer right here and activate it. Then I'm going to hit Shift Option Command E and make a new total layer. This layer that you see here is all of these layers below it now in one layer. So it's kind of like a snapshot. It's where a new layer is now my main layer here. It's with all of these things. So if I don't like what I did to this, I can throw it away, and I'm right back to where I just created this. Okay. So what I'm going to do this layer, I do want to open her up a little bit more. I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to set it to overlay, 10%. I'm going to take this guy down a little bit, and I'm just going to tap into this kimono and bring out those highlights on the kimono. Just bring them out a little bit more. The arms, the face, and the chair highlights. So that looks pretty good. I'm also going to add I'm not going to hit the edge of that. I'm just going to add just a little bit more to that feeling of light behind the chair. There we go. Okay, good. Without, with. Okay, good. Last Nick software we're going to use is the Silver Effects Pro. And here we go. I'm going to use a black and white layer here. Yep, that's the one right there. That's neutral. That's the one I want. And I'm just going to say OK. And that gives me a black and white layer on top of my image. I don't want it to be in black and white. This is not a black and white shot. I'm using this layer as my mask for desaturation. So I'm going to drag it right down to about 50%. Right there. That's with it. I'm sorry, that's without it, and that's with it, without it, and with it. I like that, but the chair's a little bit too dark, so I'm going to add a mask to that. And using black on a brush, that's right at about 17%. I was going to say 15, but we're good here. I'm going to paint that chair back a little bit to get a little more red in it. I'm also going to paint that kimono back to get a little red in that kimono. Maybe her skin tone on her face, just about there. So that's the shot as I saw it in my head. This is what I kind of knew I was going to create. I wish I'd shot it a little bit brighter, and I wouldn't have had to do so much artificial darkening. But it's okay. I can deal with this, no problem. We got a lot of we don't have any areas that go pure black except right under the kimono. We've got even these little bricks right on the edge. We've got this old door, and all the tonality that went into this image. Let's see if I can bring out a little bit red brick right there with just touching these guys right here. Yeah, there we go. And that's the final image. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it. It's not a big deal. I'm sure a lot of people do the same thing I do, but I'm just saying this is how I do it, and how I achieve the shot that I saw in my head. And it all starts in your head, all of it. You've got to see the image, the final image, in your head before you start lighting it, even, so that you know what you're going to end up with. I do like serendipity. I do very much like finding something and going, oh, that's really cool, let's try that, and going down a rabbit hole somewhere is not a bad thing for me. However, that being said, I also very much like to know what I'm doing and planning for a shot. I would say that 70% me getting exactly what I want, and 30% a little bit of serendipity into it. So I hope you enjoyed it, and stay with us here on Lighting Essentials, and we'll see you next time.